feel free to have a look there.
Hi, Wim. So, yeah, Wim's there.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
I haven't looked at the. 1 second. Here we go. Let me share my screen. What is the best way? You see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Interesting. Okay. Okay. Let me copy this. So what do we have as agenda topics? I guess secrets, probably. Are there any specific topics other than secrets?
Yeah, one is if we're going to do a bug, if we're going to open a new release for some bug fixes that we're facing. There's one open PR that I did that resolved something with the ordering of keys. Same issue, Marcus, that we've had several times. The keys were
so that we
ordered
should
in the wrong way. Yeah, and this
Do
is
we still
blocking
not
some
have a?
work.
Do we still not have a unit test for that?
No, the PR that I did adds one. The issue is that the tests were ordering the keys alphabetically before doing the checks to make sure that they were correct. So even if they were in the right order, it would be ignored by the fact that we tested the ordering anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, please take a look at the PR and see what you think. Then it would be good to have this merged because we had some questions about it.
It's the stuff you said into the maintainers channel last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was on my agenda for today.
Yeah, we should probably. I mean, is there anything else? That we need to tackle?
In terms of merging or for a new release, I don't know. From my side, I don't think so. At least not at the moment.
Because if it's blocking, we better release this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is blocking.
you fix release then, right?
Yeah, definitely. If we can get that out sooner, that would be very helpful because otherwise we'll have to do a fork to get this working. And we want to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah, let's fix it ASAP. Yeah. All right. What else do we have? Yeah, the other topic is secrets, I guess, right? All right. So I did. Wait, let me share. I was going back to the drawing board. Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
So I'm trying to give a perspective of how do I need to make it bigger?
No,
it's fine for
so
me.
To give a little bit of a back context, because I think we need to discuss this with some examples, right? Otherwise, we keep discussing things without fully probably understanding each other. So what I try to do here is, and this is not complete, but I just try to basically reflect how I came to my conclusion so far. But and so I try to give it with some examples in order to have a discussion with facts at the end of the day, right? So if you look to Kubernetes native system, this is how it works, right? Because we claim this is not Kubernetes system. This is basically how it works. So you have a secret ref that has a specific type, and then you have a key and a name, right? And the name is the secret name, and the key is the key of the within the secrets that you solve, right? The issue is that we cannot, in my view, we cannot use this mechanism as is because we don't control the schema, right? So what did we do? And that's debatable maybe, but let me give you.
It's a question about what to like pull through the schema, right? If this is information that we pre-process, if you consider this some sort of.
Marcus, let me maybe go through all the stuff and then let's discuss at the end.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Otherwise, we are going to, then we are going to debate forever, I think, right? So the first proposal that we made, which is more than a year ago, right, was this, right? So basically we said, okay, we cannot control the schema. So what did we do is we said, okay, we leverage Kubernetes stuff. So we introduced a new CR, right? And so what was the CR about? It's basically a list of paths. And this was with keys at the time, so I removed that. But at the time there was keys, and then we had the secret ref, right? And so when I opened the issue and the GitHub, the reason I saw that this was basically very difficult is because one is you have to alter 2 CRs, and second, your orchestration, the thing that you have to manage is difficult. Okay, so that was what was in this in the issue tracker. The second thing, then we said, okay, we could potentially put it in the same CR, right? But also this, then we said this was not an inline proposal, right? So as a result, we also did not pursue this. Okay. Then we went to inline without going to details, and I basically, there is 2 inline options that I was highlighting. One is, this is what I propose, what I have coded right now. So this solves, in my view, both issues, because you know the orchestration knows where to put the secrets, so you basically put it in line and job done, right? Whereas, and then we came up, also we started to debate the Flux stuff, and I didn't document it completely, but I tried to highlight a little bit. Is like in Flux, what you do is you basically don't, it's in line, you basically say input dot, let's call it blah, right? Let's say password. And then you give it a name or something like that. Or it's password or something, it's something like that. And then what you guys were debating is we also need the path. And if that is true, then that whole resolution no longer holds. Because
sorry, what is path in this context? The path.
This would be network instance.
Okay, for me this wasn't okay. In my view,
because you guys wanted.
I didn't have this in mind as being as part of the inputs.
Me neither.
Okay, so that's basically where probably the whole debate came from. Because for me, if from the moment you have to do this, right, you actually cannot reuse this value somewhere else, right? Because they become unique to it. Then explain to me what you guys have in mind.
To put the ref
I left
there.
a. So go ahead, Marcus.
That was it, right? To have the reference there to the secret.
Yes. So
Yeah,
you see
exactly.
like this
Yes.
here,
Yes.
and this would be a name or something like that. So this would
Yep.
be, right, okay.
Yeah, password is the name, right? You called the input password. So password would be the name.
Yeah, but that this has to be, okay, yeah. So password, but then this has to be,
Like indented. Yeah.
you have to do something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Not sure if the middle secret ref would be needed there. Depends on if we want to allow other inputs as well, but yeah, like that basically.
yeah, I think we have to design it that we have inputs like that, right? And that we have that we can eventually maybe do something
different
else.
types. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's also why I added the secret here, right? But so okay, so the confusion probably has been like path resolution for both of these is the same, right? There's no difference, because that's where I got confused with all the discussion. Is like you guys said you wanted to have, so that's where my confusion came from, is you wanted to have the path here, because both of these we need to resolve the path, right? In the same way, there's no difference here, right?
I think that there's so I left a comment on the GitHub this morning, 5-10 minutes before the call. In you can take this input and reuse it across the config in multiple spaces. So in this case, you could reuse the input, whereas in the option number 3, you'd have to redeclare this entire string multiple times wherever you wanted to use the same value. I didn't give an example there. I can also add an example.
So basically,
in this case,
yeah, so what you're saying is that, sorry, you broke up. Is it on my side?
Sorry, no, I'm on the train, so sometimes I get into tunnels. You were going to say something. Please go ahead. I'll reply afterwards.
Yeah, my point is like path resolution for both of these is the same, right? The resolution of which path the secret ref is resolved towards is the same in both cases, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
The thing just is in the inputs, like going towards data server, right? If we have these two sections with the input and the variable name, let's call it, the inputs name up there, you could send it to data server with data server figuring this stuff out itself, right? Because so you wouldn't need to go and like put the password there somehow, but like just take a look at the input section and handle that stuff and like give it to data server.
Yes, but this is the whole problem space where we started, Marcus, right? You cannot, because then you create a whole bunch of security issues in Kubernetes.
But
because now
this is
you
what then. Go on then.
so that That I disagree with, because the whole reason I did it like this, because originally I thought let's resolve it in data server, but because of the issues that now you
No,
have
no,
to
no, no, no.
expose-
That's not what I said.
Okay.
I just said on the. So this is the stuff that the config server takes in, right?
Yes.
And now the config server controller that sits like right beside data server has to resolve these, right? That's
No. Today, the current design, it's the central config
Yeah.
server on the API server that does it. And the reason it is done in that way is because of the security issues that you have when you basically expose secrets to a distributed system. So what happens basically, there is a single controller that basically resolves it and writes the result into the sensitive config data. So there's a resolution step that only happens once when there is a change, and that basically resolves the secrets and writes it into sensitive config, as also generates the sensitive paths.
Sorry, one
right.
thing I don't understand here
Wait, Alex.
is yeah. Go ahead, go on.
No, I said you go ahead.
Sorry. One thing I don't understand is why it's an issue to have it that config server would resolve these paths inside input, all these references inside input, have a key value pairs of these variables to secrets, and pass this to data server. The data server will have to have the secrets anyway. We're not storing anything on disk because it could be a lookup at the time of being sent to data server, or at least if it's stored to disk, it can be resolved in which would be
So the current
what is currently there anyway. So I don't see how this is going to make it more or less secure, I view.
So today, the way we discussed this the last time, the way the current design is, the resolution happens once, right? And we store the data, including the secrets, in an encrypted way on disk, okay? And that happens in the sensitive config. When we transfer the information towards the data server, we have this key ring that we expose, and that's the thing that makes it secure. And there is only a single key that is rotated across the whole system. And so there is no data stored at rest on disk anywhere.
Which is fine.
So
So
that's fine. That's and it's the same as what we would have in this situation as well, right?
exactly.
No. Wait, so
exactly. I mean,
we are guys, we are debating now a different thing. Okay, that is, one is resolution, that is two is how do we transfer the data to the data server. These are two separate concerns.
But then I don't see the difference in how it would be. At some point, this sensitive information has to cross a boundary, and that happens in both of these cases. It's just whether it happens inside config blob or if it happens as a separate piece. And if it's a separate piece, then data server control and can actually, then it can also, in my view, it has to anyway figure out where this sensitive data is stored within the config. So it has to mark that in any case. I feel like it's less duplication to have it as its own block and send it across. I don't see how these two approaches differ in the security side of things. At some point, as I said, the information has to cross into data server, and data server has to do something with it. Whether it happens at the config blob or in its own section, I don't. It's got nothing to do with storage. And this keyring stuff still stays valid if that's the approach that's chosen.
Yeah, correct. So that's why I said we are discussing two separate things. Like Marcus said, I could give this to data server, and I'm saying I cannot because I have to do the resolution. So we cannot store it as is.
I was referring to the resolved secret value, but like you would not need to specifically put it into the blob. Data server could do that.
Not if you have to do the resolution, Marcus, right?
No, because it's a separate thing here. You just need to go through the inputs and be like, oh, there's a secret ref. It's now telling me key and name, right?
Yes,
And
but
now I'm putting in the resolved value in the encrypted stuff, and that's what you send over to data server. And data server takes a look at it and be like, inputs password. Oh, okay. I'm gonna take a look at the inputs section, look at passwords, see if there's a resolved secret ref. The value is in there, and instead of using this this template string there, this variable name, it's inserting the resolved value, the resolved key value. That would keep like all the, like, how do I figure out paths and whatever from config server. It should not be concerned with that at all, and it should just then like replace these placeholder values.
yes, but right now the resolution like the path needs to be figured out somehow.
By
right?
data server, because it's in there. It's a two-step approach in this case, right? Like you on config server side, you don't care about like where to put this in the whole config. You're just like, someone wants to reference this secret here. I'm putting that value in, and like let them figure out where to put it in the configuration. That's just like decoupled. That's a separate step.
Yes, and today, I mean, the way it today it happens basically. There is a resolution. So there's basically a resolution step, right? And there is the thing, but I'm still debating for the same thing. If I build an orchestration, doing this is way easier.
There, I'm not sure about, because you then have to in config server be able to interpret what, I mean, then you have to go through the config blob and actually develop, replace things yourself. In the case of the second one, all that happens is config server takes the inputs, resolves the secrets, and creates this key value pair. So inputs, instead of being inputs password secret ref key name, it will have inputs password, actually resolved password value. It will send this alongside the blob as a separate section to data server, and data server will do this replacement. It's
yes, but
much less work in the second case.
Yeah.
Wait. So we are debating again two separate things. If I have to alter, if I write a Python code for this versus this will be way easier. Where we do the resolution, whether it happens in config server or data server, at the end of the day, doesn't really matter, in my view, right?
It does.
And so that
I'm not talking about resolution here, by the way.
yes,
I'm talking
about I'm talking about altering the data as a producer of the config that needs to be resolved is way simpler this way than this way. If you have to write an SDK on top of, let's say, Yang, doing this is 5 times simpler than this. That's what I'm talking about. And that's how I started, by the way, the whole debate. Because even for the guy that is altering that information, it just says, okay, I need to put a secret here. I'm just going to give it the key and a name, and that's it. That's how I started it, having built some SDKs recently. Altering this from an SDK point of view is way simpler.
Mark, Severin, Fabian, any comments from your side?
Sorry, just to say, I'm about to change. I need to make a train change now, so I'll probably be a bit quiet for a minute or so, but I'll try and talk when I can.
So what I don't understand regarding the option 4 is, does it use YAML anchors, or is it kind of Flux style? Or in other words, is this option 4 correctly formatted? Because this password, and then is this like what comes after password? Is it correct?
We can debate about that.
How to reference the variables? You mean?
Yeah. So I'm just confused.
No, that like we're talking not about format. We're talking about like the process of the workflow about how to do it. Don't take this for granted.
Okay. All right.
In option 4, I'd say.
Yeah, so to be honest, I cannot help you there. It's because I'm not as deep in the system to give you an opinion there.
Yeah, from the user perspective, I just see the option 4. It's like one layer of abstraction a bit more, in the case that if I want to, it abstracts a bit the secret away, in the case that if I want to change the secret or outside, I just have to change it at one place. There's one place where I do the reference, and I have them all together. So that's just for me a bit nicer as a user. Also from the implementation side, I can't really argue. I don't know the details. But...
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do agree that option 4, the value is if you are a human, right? You have less work. But in my view, we have to build a system for a machine, and a machine option 3 is way easier.
But there I also
doesn't care
disagree.
about
I mean,
work.
the machine, it would have just this dictionary that it has created of references, and then it would just look those up. I mean, not even look those up. It would just have. It knows that it's referenced the secret with this name, and it keeps this in a dictionary, and then it can put that whatever the name, the key of that dictionary into the config wherever you want it. I mean, I really don't see it. It's not more complexity. It's just a different solution. If you're talking about generating these machine-based. So you have the benefit of option 4 being good for humans and no difference for machines, in my view.
I disagree with that, because typically, no difference for machines. You basically do a resolution. Now, to be honest, we could eventually support both of these things, right? I mean, there's nothing stopping us from doing both if we have to.
I think we could, but I mean, is it worth to have both? Because I don't know, but I see that it makes it more complicated. If like the majority routes for option 4, then why don't go with 4, right? For me, it looks cleaner, but as I said, so in the technical implementation, I don't know.
3 is basically implemented. 3 is implemented right now, by the way.
Guys, I have to jump to another meeting, but maybe just we can follow up this discussion on GitHub then. So thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah. So,
I mean, at some point we have to make a decision, otherwise we're going to go around in circles. So, worst case, we can also just put it up for a vote who wants to go for which approach, and then we just say, okay, whatever wins there wins. Otherwise, we're going to keep pushing this back by weeks, and we'll never get to the implementation or having it as a feature.
Option 3 is implemented already, by the way.
It might be implemented, but I don't. Me personally, I think that option 3 is less ideal than option 4. And I think that it's one of these that it was implemented before we actually had the final agreement on how it would look.
No, I mean, basically, it was implemented just to test the concept, whether it was doable or not, right?
Yes, yes. And now we know that it's an option. We look at the problem as a whole, and then we have to agree on how we go forward. If it was a proof of concept, then we have most of the work there already. But we now have to agree together on the final look. And for me, the final look is more option 4 than option 3, for the various reasons that I've been talking about. And I think that at some point we need to just make the decision.
I just need to. I need to figure out what is the differences in terms of resolution and whether we solve a problem, right? Because what happens right now for both. So we need to resolve the secrets, right? No matter what in the config server, right? So that needs to happen, no matter what, right?
Correct. Yes.
And so in this case, what would happen is we would put the secret. What would need to happen here? So first of all, we need to define this is a hard-coded key, right?
Yeah, but maybe input is not the right word for it, but yes, we would need to find some naming for that.
Yes, yeah. And so basically what would need to happen here is, you need to look at these and do the resolution of the secrets, store them, resolve them in, so this would be config, by the way. So this would be, you resolve them.
Right next to secret ref, you would have a resolve value, raw value, whatever field.
Yeah, but I think you should replace this, right? Because there is one more thing that I saw when I was doing this is like, for example, there is the concept, there is leaf list, for example, right? So when I was doing the path resolution, there is, I'm just trying to understand. So there was a few things that I saw when I was, when I updated the resolution is like leaf lists. For example, you have, let's say, let's call it leaf lists. And then it would be like this, right? So you would have to, they would all have to be resolved, password 1.
Yeah, but on config server side, you don't even care about how they appear in the config blob. You would just go through the inputs and be like, oh, secret ref, just resolve them and store them in there, just the values.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that so what I was trying to say is that you can get invalid input is what I'm trying to say, right?
As you
Back
can
to
with regular config blobs, yeah. I mean, there's no difference. It's just this is basically a pre-processing step, right? Like switch these variables with their actual value on the data server side. Then switch these variables with their actual values, and then take them in as a config blob, as we do today. Easy peasy.
And how would they? So basically, right now, what happens is I resolve the path. So basically, what happens right now is this value is substituted, so you get immediately the right value, right? And you get a list of paths that are sensitive. That's what you get right now from config server, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this case, we would have to give you, besides the intent block, something else, right?
Exactly. The
dictionary.
like I wouldn't need the secret ref part there.
So
But
I'm assuming
as said, the raw value.
I'm assuming that,
the resolved.
what we send to you is basically this, right? This and that resolved.
Yeah.
Secret, basically.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I
which
can
is exactly
then
my idea.
resolve the secret paths myself, and replace the variable names with the variable values, and then just insert that into the transaction.
Yeah. But yeah, doing it in data, for me, where it happens at the end of the day is not really a big value, right? Why do you believe that doing it in data server is better than in config server? Let me ask that question.
For me, it's because data server anyway needs to go through these paths to figure out which ones. I mean, data server has all the information about the schema. It already has all the methods to go through the config. It needs to mark anyway sensitive config nodes. So it anyway has to do all this task. And if you do also in config server, then you're doubling the work. You're sharing the splitting, or rather, there's too much coupling there, because then config server also needs to be a bit schema aware. And I find that this is then redundant.
That's not correct, right? Like today, the config server has no schema. It doesn't have to be schema awareness to do this.
Okay, fine.
It's a separate
Schema aware
step.
or not,
You need to go through the whole config blob, which you can spare now. Config server has just to go through what is now called inputs, resolve these values, and put the resolved values in that list. That's it, right? Easy peasy.
One big value of doing it in config server, it happens only once, never again.
Yeah, but I mean, data server has to anyway go through the tree multiple times. Anytime there's an update for anything anyway. But it also won't just do it randomly.
No, it has to, right? It has to resolve it all the time. That was the other reason I tried to do it in the config server, is that it only processes when the config input changes. And it's
a map lookup for data server.
Yeah, but you have to do it. Let's say if there is 1,000 things, you have to do 1,000 updates, right? So in other words, that's a disadvantage when you do it in data server.
But there I also don't understand, because I mean, data server will only need to do it if the values have changed. I mean, if it gets a change to intent,
it has to do it all the time, Alex, right? Because if we send this to it, then this will be the input, so that this resolution has to happen with every config update. With every update, every transaction that we do, this has to happen. Whereas in the current proposal, this is not the case.
But that also could be an implementation thing on the data server side. It could already substitute these whenever it gets a new intent. Why not?
No, because the data server should not retain any context whatsoever, right?
I mean, that's impossible.
Yes,
the secrets need to be the data server needs to know the secrets at some point.
Yes, but that's why I'm saying is that today we do the resolution once, right? And it's resolved, and the config server doesn't. So the only thing it cares about, the sensitive parts, is to basically do the representation, right? That's all the data server has to do. The resolution at the moment is a one-time activity.
And why couldn't data server do this when there's an intent update?
Because if you present it like this, it has to do this resolution every time for every transaction.
I mean, that's only if it's not in the internal storage, right? Internal.
It cannot. It cannot store it, because otherwise we would present it. So that's the other thing that we still have to do, right? Is basically to leverage the secret data instead of trying to do something on your own.
But I mean, this is going to be, I don't know exactly how it's implemented in the PR that you made, Marcus, but if it's a flag on the node, then...
No, it cannot be,
the
right?
factor.
This has to be resolved every time.
So what I'm thinking is that you have, what your proposal is to have config server do this substitution into the config blob. My
Yes, what-
suggestion is to have data server do the substitution in the config blob when it receives it. But it's already at that point doing validation of the schema, right? It's going through and making sure that the config blob is actually accurate. So it has to anyway go through entire config blob to make sure it's a valid Yang, it matches the Yang schema that's attached to it. And at that point, it could also do the substitution at that time. And then it doesn't need to do this substitution every time there's some change, but it can also mark that node as being sensitive config.
I think
You have to do the resolution all the
try
time.
and translate between the two of you. I think Wim is looking at it from the perspective that we should remove the cache from data server.
Yes.
He wants us to only query the API whenever we need the Cube API, whenever we need the
No,
that's not
no.
the discussion.
just-
Then I also don't get it. Sorry.
No. You not the API. You just have to fetch it from the informer cache, basically, which basically stores it in a secure way.
And this is living in config server or in data server now? Config server.
The local, so there is two sets of config server, right? So there is the API side, right? So we basically store sensitive config in a secure block. So basically there's a key, right? And so the informer cache gets that information. And so what I have been advocating for, and we discussed it last time a little bit, is that from the moment we do secrets, we have to treat them in a secure way. So we should not store them at rest, right? And so that resolution basically, so in other words, if data server has its own cache and store it's insecure, so there is two issues today. So let me take a step back. Sorry. So today we have two issues. One is we store the data twice. But so that's an efficiency optimization. The second thing is if we do secrets, data server would store them insecure, which is bad, right? So given that the informer cache has the data, we could just fetch it from the informer cache and it stores it already. It has that in a secure way and use it like that. And the reason in the current design that I have, the reason I did the resolution in the beginning is to avoid having to then reprocess it each time again. So the resolution of the secret happens once when it's as input or when it changed, and from then onwards, basically we do the normal operation in data server as is, just look at the schema. So basically business as usual. The only thing that we have to do is basically provide sensitive config in order to do and that's mainly for representation purposes. And so there is no additional secret resolution required anymore because it happens once on input. Now that's independent of those two, right? So you could do it even if you represent it like this. You could still do it. So that's it, independent of representation, right? So what happens right now is that config. So when there is a config input, we know that there is secrets, or if there is secrets, we basically derive a sensitive config with the resolution where the data is residing. We could do it this way, but at the end of the day, if you have to do the resolution, okay. Today, there is no schema awareness needed because all the resolution happens schemaless, right?
Does this mean
So
that
that's
then
it.
in the Informer cache you'd have the secrets anyway?
Yes, but
Who
they are
controls- Who
encrypted.
controls what's in there? Yeah,
They are
but who decides what's in there, or how do you choose what's in there?
So the first step is when we get a config, right? We basically generate a sensitive config with resolution, right? So it's basically, so there is two things in the sensitive config. One is the resolved config blob, right? And second, a list of sensitive paths that config blob uses. That's basically what's in the sensitive config. So it's basically the original resolved plus config, and then it's encrypted. So that whole data is encrypted. So you cannot see it at rest.
I have another wacky idea for this, which would be that when an intent is trying to be created, you send it to data server to do its marking of sensitive paths, to figure out what the sensitive paths are. It can then do the secret placement, or sort of this variable lookup, and then it's stored into the Informer cache there. Is this possible?
No, because then we have the issue again of the secret problem, right? So the whole issue with secrets being, if you distribute them all over the place, you get all of these issues.
Don't see that. I mean, it's the same as what the current, as what your proposal was. It's just that you move the work somewhere else.
No, that's not correct, right? So basically the secret resolution happens only in the central site, right? And it's a one-time action. So it never happens again. So that was the whole reason of the design, to make it secure. And that's basically based on Kubernetes best practices.
Here I don't. It
Look
would
at
also
the
be that
PR.
they just have
You
would just have data server doing this work instead of config server, and config server can then still store it if it desires.
See, the whole reason why it's not distributed, Alex, is to avoid all this Kubernetes security issues, right? So that's why the resolution happens centrally once. Okay.
Okay, and this is not possible to offload.
Nope. I'm talking about resolution of the secret, right?
Yes. Okay. Resolution of the secret, fine, but then inserting the secret into the config.
So that's happening centrally, and I'm going back to what I said before. Whether we do it this way or that way doesn't really matter, but that I believe you cannot change, right?
No,
the whole.
Yes. Here, I'm not talking about these two options now. I'm thinking.
Me neither. What I'm trying to say is that what I'm basically trying to say is that doing that central resolution is a must for security purposes. Okay.
Yes, fine. This lookup for the secrets, I'm agreeing with. I'm not talking about this part. I'm talking about having the secrets put into the config. Because your concern is that what's going to happen is the data server needs to do this lookup or this transplant every single time that there's an update. And your solution to that, was that instead of having it is separated, you already have it included in the config.
Yes.
But from my understanding, your approach is to do this in config server. And my suggestion is that you do it in data server instead. So data server, you offload or delegate the task of doing this this working on the config to data server. So data server takes it, it can do its validation of the Yang schema compatibility. It can fill in these placeholders with the actual secret values, and then send it back to config server for storage, or return an error. That's my proposal here.
But So Alex, we are going a bit in circles, because when I originally asked for validation, you said we don't need to do it in this PR.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
I-
Yes,
I-
but what
we are
I'm
always
now,
going in circles right now.
I'm not
My
trying to go in
propo-
circles. I got more information because you said that this lookup is going to be problematic. Again, this lookup thing, it could be optimized later. This could come in a later PR. But I'm just giving
Yes,
a new
but-
suggestion that could be valuable for consideration.
Yes, but see, okay, here is my proposal, right? We can debate forever. We have something, right? That doesn't mean that this has to be remain as is. What I'm proposing is, let's take what we have, let's gain experience with it, and let's refine along the way. There is multiple things that has to happen along the way to refine it, right? Right now, we are trying to debate forever without we all seem to have different views of different things, right? Rather than like the same thing happened with like config. In the beginning, we have them as a single config snippet, right? Then we saw this doesn't work, this doesn't scale. So we moved it to a transaction approach where we group them all together, right? Why? Because we saw it doesn't work. In my view, right now, while we are debating, I prefer to do it in the data server, but we can also do it in config server. That's not a good discussion at this stage, because that's not the substitute of the whole problem space what we have right now. And today, there is no schema awareness in config server needed for any of this, right? So my proposal would be, let's move forward, make progress, because right now we are not making progress at all.
Okay. Then let's choose which option we go forward with here. And I don't, as I said, it was an optimization thing. If you're concerned about the time required to do each time there's an update as lookup, you could use this alternative. But this doesn't have to be there at the beginning. So for me, it's fine. It was just a proposal in how to solve this issue that you came up with. I think we should go forward with one of these options. We take it where it's maybe not the most efficient at the beginning, where data server has to do this lookup every update. That is fine for me. But then at least we do make progress. I agree with you. I think that, yes, we should just choose something and go forward. Otherwise, we won't ever get anywhere.
So what I'm proposing right now, because there is still stuff to be done between data server and config server, right? My proposal is, and this is not binding, by the way, Alex, right? Let's gain, this is implemented right now for 4 weeks already, okay? So let's gain experience with it, because we need to gain experience with the secrets, with the key rotation and all of that stuff, right? And I'm not saying that this is going to be the final implementation, right? Just take this and let's try to get this, the base resolved. Because moving to this, in my view, is not a big change, potentially. Of course, depends on the details. But we have this right now. And I'm not saying that this will be the final implementation, but we can gain experience with this.
I think this is a dangerous thing to do, because then, there's no longer lasting solution than a temporary one. And I think that if we're going to go forward with a different option, we should do that from the beginning. Yeah, okay, gaining experience, fine, but we should do it with the actual implementation that we think makes the most sense at this point in time.
Yes, but we have it right now, right? It's the same like Target, right? We moved it when we did sub-resources. We moved Target from a regular CR towards a backup CR with backed up with config server, right? So we do these changes all the time, because we believe that
this is also not good, because we keep changing the architecture constantly, and it's really a problem for the consumers, because we take ages to get the new architecture ready. We put everything else on hold in the meantime. We've had numerous complaints that, they're waiting for weeks for something to be fixed. And then we say, oh, but wait for the new architecture. It'll be a big change there and things will work. And then the first session is broken. I mean, I personally think that this is not a way to build trust within the system. I think that we should have an architecture that's set at the beginning. Yes, okay, sometimes that changes over time, but it shouldn't be such major changes all the time. This is setting one precedent for how we're going to represent this problem. And then some weeks later, oh no, okay, now we're going to the one we actually decided on. I think it's better that we have this consistency. And that for me is more of a risk.
Yes, okay, but see, yeah. I'll explain you, see. We opened GitHub stuff, right? At this moment in time, see. And so far, unless because the whole debate was, we never really talked about this, right? How easy is it to represent this? We have wasted so much time because we are not discussing the facts, right? So, but just to be clear, Alex, right? So I will be a couple of days off, right? If you want this, you'll have to wait for some time to get this, by the way. Whereas what I'm proposing is, this is implemented, you can gain experience, and I'm not saying this is binding, right? We can still move to something else, right? But at least start testing some of these things and putting the both pieces together rather than waiting again.
So how about instead of working on this, or instead of this having this, we talk about the contract between data server and config server? Because that's the part that actually is going to be the block at the end. If these two approaches are so interchangeable, then let's decide on the contract between config server and data server. I mean, it's in this case, it's not super.
The contract between config server and data server is user invisible, right? So that's the least problem. But there is two things that needs to happen. I wired up this morning the thing that Marcus did, right? So in other words, there is a proposal in config server with the sensitive paths that I've wired up, right? The thing that is missing still in data server is to leverage a secure data store. But apart from that, there is an implementation to config server and data server. And in my view, that's the least user impacting. So you can change that without having any user visibility. Right?
Sorry, did you ask me for something?
What I'm trying to say is that the contract between the config server and data server is not really user facing, so we can change that independent. Right?
Yes, no, that's because it's not user facing, sure, but the user facing stuff is exactly what we're looking at here, right? There's option 3, option 4.
Yeah, but that is independent on how config server and data server works. You could still resolve it in config server or you can do, and so basically option 3 and option 4 is basically you can still do the resolution in config server if you want. You can do it either way.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that if you want this for me to implement, you will have to wait a couple of, actually probably a few weeks. And so my proposal is start testing this, and then we can always change to this if needed, right? But start testing it because the wiring up between all the pieces is done. That's what I'm proposing. So and let's see, because there might be bugs left, right, and center, and they are probably independent of what needs to happen, what we finally end up with. Plus, we can also figure out a little bit more the impact, what is the difference between 3 and 4 and stuff like that, so we can flush it out, because the devil is in the detail, as always, right? There's pros and cons of both, by the way. So there's not. So we need to flush this out a little bit more now. Now that we understand what each of these are, because so far, for me, option 4 was never, let's say, presented like this. right? So we need to basically flush out the implication of them as well, right? But in the meantime, we can gain experience with the whole system.
Okay, I mean, as I said, if there's the ability to connect the two parts, the conf server and data server together and so on, then, then that's good. That's a good start.
So, but today, so today it's done, that resolution still happens in config server. We represent the sensitive parts, right, to it, right? That I just, I add the PR, so I just coded it this morning, right? So that's done. I need to add some tests, which I was going to do after this call, and then we can start testing it. The thing that is still missing is that we need to look at how data server is going to, let's say, leverage the cache in a secure manner. That's still TBD.
Yes. Okay. This cache thing is also interesting because that, yeah, how that works and who is controlling what there will also be interesting to figure out.
Yeah, correct. So there's still a lot of work to be done independent of this, right? In the meantime, I'll think a little bit more of the consequence between these two, right? And then we can flush that out and move along. All right?
Yep. Okay.
Okay, doke. Then talk to you.
Yep. See you. Have a good rest of the day. Good start to the week, everyone.
Yeah, cheers.
See you.